Hi everyone, my name is Kaplan, and I am the founder and CEO of a company called Prometheum. I want to start out by giving a little bit of background about myself. I was formerly a securities attorney at Gusway Kaplan Nussbaum on Wall Street in New York City with a firm that focused on molecular securities issues. Since 2013, I focused my practice on the application of distributed ledger technology to the securities industry and the related regulatory issues. In 2017, I started Prometheum, and people ask, what's behind the name Prometheum? Well, Prometheus was the god that gave man fire, which led to rapid technical and civilization advancement. And Prometheum is the company that's going to give the world a compliant infrastructure by which to issue, transact, clear, settle, and custody tokens compliantly under the federal securities laws. And we believe that will be the spark of the crypto spring. Now, I'm sure a lot of people here are familiar with the crypto winter. And it's my thesis that the crypto winter came about because regulation, the distributed economy, got ahead of regulation. And what you had was a lack of token issuance standards led to poor quality projects getting funded. A lack of investor protections led to market manipulation, pump and dumps, and just a general lack of integrity in the token market. Furthermore, when the SEC imposed regulation, imposed enforcement in the United States, what happened was that it led to a bifurcation in the token market. And issuers had to choose whether to issue illiquid tokens in the United States that were only available to accredited investors and couldn't trade on the secondary market, or to be compliant outside the United States and not let those tokens come back in. So you really had a split in the world. Now, furthermore, when the SEC imposed regulation, what happened was that the infrastructure for compliant issuance, transaction, and processing of tokens did not exist. Therefore, I would argue that a securities ecosystem that implements the investor protections of the federal securities laws is required in order for the distributed economy to flourish. Now, what is Prometheum? Well, Prometheum is creating the market infrastructure that leverages the blockchain to service the entire securities token lifecycle. Our Ember token and blockchain-enabled smart contract network form comprehensive networks and the underpinnings of a securities ecosystem that allow for the issuance of free trading tokens that are available to all investors worldwide as a secondary market and exchange component, which essentially allows tokens to be transacted freely in the secondary market, has mechanisms for clearing and settling token transactions, and monitoring custody of customers' cryptographic assets. Now, I want to take a look at the problems that occurred in the industry, and we'll go in the order here. First, there was no regulated market. So basically, US-based token exchanges were not registered or complying with the SEC. Second, there were no registered tokens. What that basically meant was that all tokens were either illegal or exempt from registration. And an exempt security is illiquid and only available to accredited investors. And that's not really in the spirit of the blockchain community or in the interest of the distributed economy. Third, there were no investor protections. And investors were faced with a lack of information because there was no token issuance standards, which meant they couldn't really choose or make an informed decision to invest in the token offerings that were out there, and that led to them losing a lot of money. Fourth, there was no infrastructure. And basically, there was no compliant solution for the issuance, liquidity, clearance, settlement, and custody of token securities in the United States. And that's what's really needed in order for the distributed economy to flourish. So Prometheum provides here, what Prometheum does is it's a complete solution. We allow for the compliant issuance of tokens that are available to all investors worldwide and are free trading on the secondary market. And we use a regulation called Regulation A+, which allows for liquidity in tokens once they're issued. Second, the second component to our ecosystem is an alternative trading system, which is really the equivalent of an exchange, a New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ for tokens, that allows both investors and active traders worldwide to buy and sell tokens freely on the secondary market, compliantly under the federal securities laws. And finally, we have a clearing and settlement and custody component.
And that basically allows for us to implement the advantages of distributed ledger technology to basically disrupt the back office processes of the brokerage industry and introduce efficiencies, reduce costs, and basically eliminate redundancies. Now, what are the advantages of this complete solution? Well, one, it's an SEC and FINRA registered ATS. Our ATS is regulated in the US and ensures investor protection, issuer accountability, and market integrity. And I would argue that that's essential for the crypto winter to end and the bloom of the crypto spring to flourish. Second, we have SEC qualified tokens. In the United States, when the security is qualified by the SEC, what that means is that it is available to all investors, not just accredited investors, and can be freely trading on the secondary market, which is essential because if you think about it, tokens have utilities on blockchains, and people have to be able to buy and sell them freely under the federal securities laws, or else you're just stuck. You can't use them. Third, liquidity, and this is essential. Our equity-based electronic market and trading platform employs a maker-taker model, which is both attracts retail investors and active traders, and basically introduces liquidity in the market, which is essential for the distributed economy to flourish. And fourth, as I sort of mentioned before, we streamline the clearance, settlement, and custody process by using our native blockchain. Essentially, our whole ecosystem creates efficiencies, eliminates costs, and really disrupts the traditional processes of the brokerage industry in the United States. So how does it work? Well, in the top left corner here, we have how investors sign up. So when an investor comes in or a trader comes in, they obviously have to complete AML KYC. That's a prerequisite for every brokerage account in the United States. And what's important to understand here, and I think it's a major point for blockchains in general, is that the investor's creating a brokerage account. They don't know they're creating a virtual wallet that's holding their tokens, but they don't need to know, because all they need to know is that they're getting the advantages of distributed ledger technology, and it eliminates the barriers to entry. To create a wallet is going to be difficult for any sort of baby boomer, but baby boomers are very comfortable in transacting through their brokerage account. Next, below on this box on the bottom left, we have the qualification process for issuers. So an issuer comes to the platform, and they go through the Reg A process, which requires it to be qualified by the SEC. And as I mentioned before, because it's qualified, you have free trading tokens that are available to all investors, and it introduces the liquidity that's required in order for the distributed economy to flourish. Finally, on the top right here, we have the Prometheum ATS. Once an issuer goes through the issuance process and the qualification process, and that token gets funded, it needs a place to get listed, or else you're just stuck. And it gets listed on our ATS, our New York Stock Exchange NASDAQ equivalent for tokens. Finally, the big box in the middle, the Prometheum blockchain, is where everything occurs. Tokens are issued. Executed transactions in our ATS are written to our blockchain, and it's reconciled against settlement transactions that occur at the clearing firm to basically ensure market efficiency and efficiency in ordering and processing of transactions that occur on our network. Now, I want to go a little bit into our issuance model. Prometheum uses a regulation called Reg A+, that allows issuers to raise up to $50 million annually from the general public, anyone around the world. And what that means is that it's not limited to accredited investors, and furthermore, because you go through qualification, those tokens are liquid on the secondary market. And what you're doing here is you're introducing the investor protections and the full disclosure requirements of the federal securities laws to basically use regulation as your sword and shield. Regulation's not bad, it's our friend, it actually protects investors. The second component to it, the advantages of the Reg A+ model, of the Prometheum issuance model, is what we call a smart security offering, and when compared to an initial public offering, you can really see the difference. So an initial public offering is expensive and slow. It costs a minimum of $5 million, and it costs up to $75 million, and can take up to 3 years. The distributed economy moves way too fast for that, and it's too expensive for younger companies, so it's just not a viable model. If you look at Prometheum's smart securities offering, what's interesting there is that the cost is a fraction of what it is to do an IPO. It's $200,000 to $700,000, and it could all be accomplished under a year, which is super important. The distributed economy moves quickly. You have to give people the ability to issue these tokens compliantly under the federal securities laws in a manner that can be done efficiently and allow that business to flourish. Here's the second component to our ecosystem. So we have the issuance component, we have the secondary market, the exchange component, and then you have the clearance and settlement component, and all that sits on top of Prometheum's blockchain and is powered by our Ember token. But basically what we're doing here is we're introducing the existing equity structure for our secondary market, which introduces investor protections and market integrity by preventing manipulation. And what will also happen is that traders and other people who might have shunned other sort of alternative investments in tokens will feel comfortable transacting on a marketplace that uses existing equity structures. This is what they've done historically, and it's proven over the course of decades to try to basically create an efficient market that's actually orderly and introduces investor protections. So the final components of our regulated ecosystem on the regulation side, so issuance, trading, clearance and settlement and custody, is the clearance, settlement and custody component. Now, if you look at traditional clearing, it's a slow process, it's inefficient, it's expensive, there's mistakes, there's redundancies, and basically what's happened is that since the 1920s in the United States, the back office processes, the clearance and settlement of securities has been a combination, a sandwich of different technologies stacked on top of each other, which basically just make it expensive, slow, and there's lots of mistakes because there's a lot of manpower required, the human components of it. But what Prometheum does, by using the blockchain, we can clear, settle, and custody trades intraday, and the back office processes are coordinated by smart contracts and allow for automation, reducing costs and overhead. And basically what you're doing is taking advantage of distributed ledger technology to solve an existing problem. You're disrupting the back office processes of the brokerage industry. So we said that we have the issuance, the trading, and the clearance and settlement component. That's the regulated infrastructure. But this is all blockchain native, and it sits on top of Prometheum's blockchains. Prometheum uses two blockchains, actually. We have our core chain, which is a permission chain, where all regulated securities activities occur. And obviously, you have to make sure for compliance under the federal securities laws. But the truth is, as I mentioned before, tokens are both compliant financial assets and have utilities in the distributed economy. And you have to provide a mechanism, a bridge for that to occur. So Prometheum does that. And what Prometheum does is it allows users or investors to move their tokens from the permission chain to a utility chain, where those tokens can actually be utilized in the decentralized economy. And we really believe that that's what's needed in order for the distributed economy to flourish, and for tokens to go from a smaller asset class that's considered on the periphery to being mainstream, and furthermore, for the general public, the retail public, and institutions to feel comfortable with participating in this new token economy, in the distributed economy. Now, Prometheum's Ember token is basically the fuel for this entire network. And it's what we call our first smart security token. And it's interesting because we're actually the first company in the United States to file a Reg A Plus application for a token, which means we're not only providing the mechanisms, we actually go through the process and set the precedent. And what ends up happening is that the Ember token really has two major components. One is a proprietary payment currency component, which allows it to be used to pay for transactions on the Prometheum blockchain. But the second, and that's what's more interesting, is the work access component. And the work access component gives holders of Ember token access to two sets of rights: network protocol participation rights and business ecosystem participation rights. And the network protocol permissions, both these sets of rights actually have value in their profit-making utility. On the network protocol participation rights, it allows holders to provide service on the blockchain protocol level. And the business ecosystem participation rights, it allows holders to provide a service on the application level, on the level on top of our blockchain. And what we believe is that as the Prometheum network grows, as more issuers issue tokens on our platform, there's more value in that profit-making utility, as there will be more opportunity for profit-making through that utility. Now, I want to end here and basically say it's super important to understand that tokens are a new asset class, and they're super important. They're the 21st century asset class, a true internet asset class. And what that allows for is their value isn't related to the profit or loss of the company. It's related to the growth of the network, the user interest in the network, and the utility of that token. And what's required is the mechanisms by which you can treat tokens as compliant financial assets, compliantly under the federal securities laws, that allows investors around the world to transact these tokens across jurisdictions, while at the same time you also need to provide a bridge in order for tokens to be utilized in a decentralized economy. And it's our opinion that by the bridge that Prometheum is building and we're providing, and we plan to be live by the end of 2019, meaning a New York Stock Exchange NASDAQ for token live by the end of 2019, what you're really allowed to do is you'll spark the bloom of the crypto spring. And we'll move out of this crypto winter and to basically where tokens are considered a mainstream asset that will allow the distributed economy to flourish. Thank you very much for your time, everyone. If anyone has any questions, please come find me. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron, for a great presentation. So moving on, I shall hand over to Du Yu, Director of Wangxiang Blockchain Labs, ISME Security Director of Slowmist, Zhang Changhao, Co-founder and CTO of Kobo Wallet, Benjamin Song, Head of Asia Pacific Ledger, and Kenneth Xu, Founder and CEO of Invout, to discuss best practices and solutions for firms and fund managers wishing to securely hold their digital assets. 我有请杜徐、赵畅豪、Benjamin Song、Ken Xu 来到台上分享接下来的论坛主题。我们有请 Let's welcome our panel